What is up, Bat family? Welcome to my The Batman main trailer breakdown. So this is what I want to call the definitive breakdown. I'm going to be going shot by shot. I have got so many bullet points of interesting tidbits that, as I said, I wanted to take quite a while of studying this trailer before I came out with a video and a full in-depth breakdown. So I'm sure you've seen a few already on YouTube, but I like to think that we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details here. Go ahead and like this video if you do go on to enjoy it. I do encourage you to subscribe to this channel for more future The Batman content. This is the place to be for that. We do Bat content usually every week on the channel. Updates, theories, you name it. And by the way, yep, I've already done a reaction freaking out to this. I put something out straight away yesterday, but yeah, now it is time to get into the details. So let's talk about this main trailer for the Batman. So the first shots of the trailer pick up with the GCPD honing in on the Riddler's location as we see this, what I want to call somewhat of a quintessential atmosphere of Reeves's Gotham City. And they managed to arrest him, and a little bit too easy, don't you think? This will come into the breakdown in a little bit, but also a nice little Riddler question mark is left behind in his cappuccino. Honestly, a very Riddler thing to do. A scene later in the trailer actually shows Batman meeting an inmate in Arkham, most likely the Riddler, as we do see his face in the reflection. I was speculating, oh my god, is this the rumors of the Joker or something like that? And apparently, you know, according to rumors, things like that could still be possible, but very clearly here, you can see Edward Nashton, aka the Riddler. For those new to the channel wondering, hey, why isn't he called Edward Nigma? Well, that will come later, I'm sure, but initially his name is Edward Nashton. And to be honest as well, this particular scene that we're talking about now is one of my favorites in the trailer, just because Bruce can barely contain himself before belting out, "What have you done?" But you can see that he tries. He really does try to refrain himself before his face crinkles up in this rage and he has that outburst. And to be honest, the reason why, as I said, this is my favorite scene, because with everything we know about this movie, how much is getting into Batman's head, this particular scene really does personify this Batman's rage. He can't help himself despite trying to refrain sometimes, and this moment really shows that. Also, just with the desperation of his exclaim of "what have you done," this does make me feel like this moment is much later in the movie, as I already detailed, because whatever Bruce is very concerned about with what the Riddler has done, it could just be that very diabolical last act that the villain has put into place, and Bruce is just very concerned because he knows that he wouldn't have gone into Arkham Asylum to meet face to face with him for no reason. After all, we hear the chilling voice of Paul Dano's Riddler saying, "I've been trying to reach you," as we know, to the Batman, the letters throughout the movie. This is that face-to-face moment, or at least one of them, and I can't wait for this scene. Up next, we then cut some commentary from Bruce as Lieutenant James Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, fires up the bat signal. I love seeing the bat signal already. Everything is just eye candy at this point. So we hear Bruce say that fear is a tool over the perfect Nirvana track that is still echoed within this trailer, Something in the Way. Thank you, Matt Reeves, or whoever chose that song choice. It's also Something in the Way speaks to larger aspects of this film and what Batman is going through. Quite literally, there is something in the way. And when the light hits the sky, he says it's not just a call, it's a warning. Now, these words from Bruce perfectly complement this next scene in the trailer of those who should heed the warning of the bat signal, because we see these thugs on the train line perhaps targeting this woman on the train getting off on her next stop. But then, guys, of course, we see the Batman rise up from the ground, or the shadows, if you will, come out of an alleyway of darkness with some very familiar shots of the previous DC fandom trailer, but we finally get an awesome continuation of this fight scene. Now, as you can tell, at least some portion of this fight still takes place at a stop of a train station, and that's quite important to note because, as I said, it's likely Batman came to the rescue of that woman or another passenger who was on the train and the same carriage as those thugs. One of my favorite parts about this scene in particular was the choice to have Batman alone against so many people. Like, there's so many thugs. There are a lot of people. He is more or less outnumbered, but no, that's probably not really an issue. He's not too worried about that. We see him take a few hits, a gunshot, a few whacks. Also, fun little tidbit, notice Jay Lycurgo's thug as well. Everybody was freaking out about him in the first DC Fandom trailer, and fun little tidbit as well, he went to be cast as Tim Drake, the Robin, Tim Drake on Titans Season 3, and we see him again in this moment of the trailer. He isn't fighting in the background as well. He's just watching in fear, and I can't wait to see if he's just like the last thug left after he's beat everyone else up, and he's like the one who didn't even want to touch Batman. And that particular moment could also change Jay Lycurgo's thug and his life forever in Gotham City after witnessing the Bat just beat the crap out of his friends. And yes, guys, we finally see what happens to that thug who shot Batman in the previous trailer last year. Last year, we only got the footage of where he just gets, shot and it ricochets off his armor. But here, we get to see that pissed Bruce off a lot. So he grabs him, brings him up to this beam, and tases him with his bare hands. And I love how the Batsuit already has this backup incapacitating tool of the shock gloves, just like this. Now, if you're familiar with Batman and just the lore in general, he does acquire like shock gloves later on, usually in his career, but this is somewhat of a proto of that. It's probably just a taser little gadget attached to his gauntlet or his hand or whatever, and that's like a really practical yet very Matt Reeves thing to do, and that is to add a way for Batman in his early days to simply, if you're in a bit of a tough spot in a fight, sure, you can whack him and knock him out, but hey, a taser for a certain thug or two might also be very handy in a situation like this. Now, up next, we see a little bit of an explosion in the trailer near these train tracks. It's honestly hard to tell what caused it. Could be the Riddler, but honestly, could be anything or anyone. But this explosion scene does tie into the dialogue of what we hear next from Lieutenant James Gordon, with him saying, "This is a powder keg." But then we hear Robert Pattinson's Bruce reply back to that saying, "And Riddler is the match." Now, those words that I just read out are spoken over scenes that many of you may be familiar with, considering these were very popular scenes to leak from the movie, and where we can see Bruce, who has just got freshly out of his posh old-fashioned car to the entrance of the cathedral, of where I believe they are holding the mayor's funeral for the same guy who died right at the beginning of the first DC Fandom trailer, of where it said "no more lies" and everything like that. Now, this is shortly before, though, District Attorney Gil Coulson will come rushing in with the car, as seen in the previous DC Fandom trailer as well, with the bomb attached to his neck, of which from the previous DC Fandom trailer, we know it explodes and he doesn't make it. Notice how these reporters and photographers are hounding Bruce Wayne. Now, I've got a couple of theories about this that we've somewhat been over before, but just to chuck it out there quickly, of course, Bruce Wayne always gets attention in Gotham. Anytime he goes out, the public will take notice. But a big theory for this film that I've spoken about for some time now is that despite Bruce Wayne having been Batman for 1 year, 6 months during the time of when this movie picks up, that doesn't mean that he's also gone out in public much as his Bruce self. It could also be very possible that since returning to Gotham from training to start his Batman vigilante career to protect Gotham for that past 1 year and 6 months up until this time the movie picks up, he could have been a complete recluse. Hence why the people are extra sensitive and hyped up to see Bruce Wayne appear in public. But then again, I could be slightly wrong about that, and they could just be hounding him anyway. But there is a really sweet theory to think that ever since Bruce got back in Gotham and, per the director's commentary about how there really isn't much of a Bruce version of himself at this point, he's mostly Batman in this film. Precisely, he is mostly Batman. He needs to still learn to get the Bruce Wayne somewhat masked version out of himself and learn to tap into his Bruce side more the more he goes throughout the trilogy. Now, as to why Bruce will be coming out during the events of the movie after 1 year and 6 months, pertaining to my little theory that I just spoke out, well, why would that be? Well, precisely because the events of the movie. Attending the funeral as Batman, it wouldn't be so great, but he can attend as billionaire Playboy Bruce Wayne, which will be very helpful to his investigations because he kind of knows that something might happen in this moment. But I love how the trailer decides to introduce this dashing Selina Kyle to Bruce in this moment, if you will, as she steps out the car. Now, in this trailer, to many people's surprise, actually, we don't get a tease of Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro. However, you know, a little tease for those of you who might not have been around during the filming, we know that Selina Kyle is arm in arm with Falcone during the cathedral scene with the mayor. Like, she seems to be with him in some capacity if you're arm in arm walking down the steps. We then get some very flirtatious Batcat scenes between them both, one particular right by the bat signal, and Selina says that she can take care of herself, showing that Batman must have done something previously to this moment in terms of, you know, or is just following her or to just watch over her. Well, as we know, Selina is very capable, and right after this, we see exactly that. In this particular scene as well, it looks as though we can see Batman visiting Selina Kyle. This could be very well where she stays in Gotham because she just seems to be, I don't know, just in her usual loungewear, if you will. And after this, we can see and hear Andy Serkis's Alfred say to Bruce that if this continues, it won't be long until you have nothing left. Probably because Bruce is pursuing the Riddler, wreaking his brain, not sleeping, nothing. Just really trying to solve this Riddler case. And I personally love this little look into their relationship, how much this task is really straining Batman and Bruce Wayne's psyche, if you will. We see examples of exactly this as Bruce is trying to solve what the Riddler's endgame is, with several aspects to this case that have already been and passed at this point in the movie. We can see that he's somewhat spray painted it on the floor. He's really using his detective skills to just scatter. It's almost like an evidence board, but he's just put it on the floor. We see no more lies, likely for the mayor. We have Coulson, who we know is the district attorney and blows up in the cathedral. We have Savage, as in Pete Savage, Commissioner Pete Savage, if I remember the name correctly, who is, as I said, the current commissioner of Gotham City, as seen in the other trailer, who might just bite the dust and potentially might pave a new way for a certain other Lieutenant James Gordon to become commissioner in the future. As we know, he is probably headed for that direction. And then a bunch of evidence for this Mitchell and how renewal is a lie. Now, I would dissect every minuscule little photo, but obviously the more you zoom into them, the more blurrier they get. But the one piece that piques my interest most about this little evidence layout that Bruce is racking his brain with is also where it says the sins of my father. Now, once again, wondering if that is directly linked to Bruce, the sins of his parents, the Waynes. The Waynes potentially having some, you know, aspect on the spectrum of being corrupt. Now, let me get into this very, very quickly for those who may be new to the channel. A big fan theory is that the Waynes could have been a part of Gotham's corruption in some shape or form. Whether they played a large part, a tiny part, it doesn't really matter. They could still somewhat be involved, and I think that will be the integral part. Even if it's in a small way, that would still disgust Bruce if he were to find out. Now, this could also lead to a very telltale Batman moment where Alfred reveals a very similar thing to Bruce Wayne, where he's losing his shit in the Batcave in that game. And we've even had the director Matt Reeves himself heavily emphasize the corruption that goes back for generations in Gotham City for this movie. He's even gone as far to say that Bruce is thinking, how does this all come back to me and my family? So you can see why the sins of the father could be linking to Bruce finding out that, unbeknownst to him, you know, his parents, the people of whom he's had up on a pedestal his whole life, all while likely having done much good at the same time, it could be one of those situations where, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, you might not be able to be one of Gotham's elite, if you will, without having, yeah, fair enough, not a whole foot, but maybe a single toe in the paddling pool of Gotham's corruption. And maybe Martha and Thomas Wayne just couldn't help but, you know, put a little bit of a toe in there. As for the location here specifically, this could be another part of the old abandoned subway, aka Batcave, you know, Wayne Terminus, but then again, this could be also where Bruce is staying. More on that a little bit later. But continuing onwards, back to Alfred's comments of concern for Bruce. Bruce is honestly probably, as you can tell with these scenes, very much so overextending himself. So much so that Alfred is watching Bruce eat himself up alive. But as we hear from Bruce up next, he says, "I don't care what happens to me," just showing how he is almost just a vessel for his crusade, his mission. He doesn't really care what happens to himself. He just wants to enact this crusade he's got, and that is to be the Batman and make a difference. And yet again, that is just me teasing the journal and where he writes down, "I want to make a difference." Trust me, stick to the end of this video for more B-roll footage breakdown, because there's some really cool tidbits there. To add on to this even more, in the trailer we even hear Selina saying that it's only going to get worse for you, just furthering that this is probably the largest and most grueling task that Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, has been up against so far in his 1 year and 6 months of starting his caped crusade. Sure guys, he's handled maybe the mob, crime families, this, that, and the other, but he hasn't been pushed to the intellectual limits of that of one of his rogues gallery members, like the Riddler. This is his actual first proper test as the Batman, and that's why it's doing such things to his mind. And that is also why this movie is going to be such a great point of view driven noir detective story. I love this shot of Pattinson's Bruce though, just sitting in a chair reading a paper, probably about the Riddler or himself as the Batman, with these shades on, probably sensitive to the light because, get it, he's a Batman. Okay, I'm just gonna carry on. But with that shot of Bruce talking to Alfred saying, you know, "I don't care what happens to me," it's very likely in the Batcave, and with the B-roll footage playing before the trailer, we got some looks of what some of his equipment might look like in the Batcave on display, such as his cowl here. I was wondering, does he have a proper suit stand in the wall or something? And he still might do, and this could just be where he just temporarily put his cowl down, but it literally looks like it's just on a brick or something. But like, this is perfect and is just presents where kind of it's not like Dark Knight, oh, super advanced Batcave or something like that. Very early, 1 year, 6 months. Also in this B-roll footage, we see some designs for the emblem, more focus on this towards the very end of the video, as I said, such as exactly what he says in that part of the journal, and I can't wait to read that out to you guys, because it just gives you that insight of Batman, because he's keeping journals in this movie, and I believe, as what we've read out before, this film, in a very noir detective point of view driven way, will have Robert Pattinson read out his Bruce Wayne journal entries to help annotate the film, if you will. The next shots we get in the trailer are of Colin Farrell. Yes, I say Colin Farrell's Oz Cobblepot. Yes, I know he's called Oswald Cobblepot, but at this point, as Reeves has said, he likes being called Oz. He doesn't like being called the Penguin. He will one day, but right now, people call him the Penguin, but he doesn't necessarily like it. He hasn't embraced it yet, hence to give you another idea of where we're at in this universe quite early on. In this moment, he's quite possibly looking out one of the windows of the Iceberg Lounge, and I saved to speak about this until now because we can connect it with other shots in the trailer of where Bruce jumps out from nowhere and starts fighting a bunch of thugs, and where a ton of people are in the background, as if they're in somewhat of a nightclub. Also, may I just say that I've said it before, I'll say it again, Oz Cobblepot on a practical and makeup, everything level looks incredible. So let's dive into this whole Penguin part of the trailer. We've known for quite some time now that Batman may go around Gotham's criminal underworld in order to help him crack this Riddler case. So considering Oz is in this movie, these could be our very first looks at his very early concept, an Iceberg Lounge club. It might not be as theatrical as it is in some of the comics or video games. At this point, he might just have the Iceberg Lounge in the Narrows, a very gritty, grotty part of Gotham where it's just the beginnings of Oz Cobblepot's enterprise. But it is also perfect at the same time to have it in a very kind of industrial looking location, and where he's like the kingpin at the top, you know, the club boss office, if you will. And that really fits this description here of what we see in the trailer. And it also just makes sense, as I said, to have it in such a grotty area of Gotham. And you even have Batman in this scene likely walking there just before the fight unfolds, unfolds or on his way out after the fight of what we see in the trailer. And you see that he's just passing these citizens. As I said, let's just imagine this is a very grotty part of Gotham in the Narrows, and these citizens, they just don't even seem to be concerned that the Batman is there walking right by them. I mean, sure, we might see some scenes of people take a second look at him, but it just gives you that kind of extra way of viewing this world, because it just shows how the Bat isn't like an insanely well-known character just yet in Gotham, because as I said, it's very much so in the infancy of his vigilante career, and it's not too far-fetched to see a man maybe even dressed like a bat. Maybe people have just seen weird shit like this happen before, and I love that. But after all of that very cool looking combat, we see that Bruce, or should I say Batman, is stopped by the Penguin saying, "Take it easy." Notice how this device as well is somewhat very quickly deployed. It like somewhat retracts and just snaps out. It seems to be somewhat hidden under his gauntlet, or his wrist guard, if you will. And I love these gadgets. It is a very Batman thing. Now this could be to deploy smoke or something similar. We have yet to see, to be honest. And no, it's not a gun. Yes, it has a little hole maybe to dispense smoke, but that doesn't mean it's going to shoot Penguin. No guns. Trust me, for this Batman, no guns. But we know that Bruce does literally hold a literal grapple gun, so this very likely isn't like a device for him to grapple out. It probably is for theatricality, if you know what I mean. Some people also thinking that it could be maybe the taser they used earlier on. I personally think that could be just linked to his actual gloves, but we have to wait and see. Just another badass Bat gadget. Now everyone, notice how Selina Kyle, when she's walking with this particular wig on, it seems to be in the very same location and club that Batman was fighting in before he talks to Cobblepot. So as usual, it seems that when there's Batman in this film, Selina isn't too far away. Now as I keep mentioning about that B-roll footage, well, some of that footage actually does show Selina arriving at this club, which is, as I say, most likely the very early Iceberg Lounge, and she arrives in the elevator holding a tray of drinks. So perhaps she is arriving there in a somewhat of a get-up and trying to kind of come off as a hostess with her drinks and shots, if you will, of the Iceberg Lounge. Of course, in the trailer, we get some more Batcat scenes in where Selina is saying, maybe we're not so different. Who are you under there anyway? Now, honestly, I love this. I really like how they're not having Bruce reveal himself and they're actually playing up the whole, oh, we may know each other as Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, but we don't know who each other are under the mask and our alter egos, if you will, or vigilante form. And they probably know each other because they likely bump into each other at those cathedral scenes from what we've seen in the behind-the-scenes photos. As we know, Bruce Wayne attends. We know that Selina Kyle attends, seeming to be in this somewhat Carmine Falcone and Penguin posse or something. But do they have no idea who each other are in the suits? Or it might just be the situation of that Bruce recognizes Selina because it's not like she conceals her identity too much other than wigs, unless we're going the Superman dialing his hair back route of believability here. But most certainly, as we just could find out from the trailer, Selina doesn't know that maybe the billionaire that she saw attend the funeral, Bruce Wayne, is actually the guy under this cowl. So maybe it's more of a one-sided thing, and the anonymity is just on Bruce Wayne / Batman's behalf. So, in this particular scene where we see Selina run off and jump off the roof, likely to kind of maybe tail and grapple down that little rope there, if you will, I think this is connected to this scene where Bruce is punching the living crap out of someone, and we know who. It is indeed the Riddler, and more on this in a second. Can we just admire, a little bit of a random tangent here, can we just admire the glow of Gotham City? It's very red kind of glow, Batman the Animated Series somewhat vibe with the kind of warm red glow from the underbranches, if you will, of the city. We know this Gotham City is built up from cities that may feel familiar to you, but it's completely brand new. For example, it's constructed from iconic locations in Liverpool, London, Scotland, just loads of places, Chicago, so it's truly unique. And I love the Gotham City look and the scopes that we get in this trailer. But anyway, back on task. This scene, everyone is already speculating that this is where he's knocking the crap out of the Riddler and borderline is walking the line of his no-kill rule. Now, here we can see it's the Riddler because we can see his literal glasses and the top of his shiny little mask that he puts over his face. Very Zodiac Killer inspired glasses on top of the little mask that he's wearing. So we know this is where he is literally face to face with the Riddler out in Gotham, and he is beating him to a pulp. Very, yeah, The Prisoner's style. Paul Dano doesn't really seem to catch a break with getting beat in movies. But as I said, this is probably the very scene where he walks that line, and it probably really boldens and speaks out larger to his no-kill rule, and maybe it's even further established in this moment, showing that he has to temper the beast of the Batman inside. And this moment likely awakens that revelation in him in a very Darwin Cook Batman ego graphic novel tribute, if you will. If you've been watching my channel for some time, you'll know that one of the heavy inspirations for this movie is Batman Ego by Darwin Cook, and that gets into the duality of Bruce Wayne, the beast who wants to kill and just do all of this stuff, but he more or less by the end of the story bargains with his own self that he will continue to be Batman, but Batman cannot kill, and it is somewhat of this duality that forms. They both compromise. And in this movie, that will be a big theme that is playing with, obviously, the rage coming out of Batman the Beast, and we're going to have to see how he gets brought back from that. And we could even have a very similar, somewhat trip in where he sees the Batman version of himself, just like he does in Batman Ego, the graphic novel. It may be a bit of a drug trip, because we know that there are drugs in this movie called the drops that are being produced, and we know that Gotham Health Department is sending out these, billboard signs and adverts saying need help and stuff because there's this drug going around. Maybe this could be a cool little trip into doing something like that. Now, in this moment, we see how concerned Selina looks, and this is probably, and will probably low-key shake her because she's seen the raw Batman here, and maybe up until this moment in the movie, she hasn't seen how far Bruce can actually go in his blind rage. And then, back to the scene we were talking about, with the other scene connecting to this, she runs off and jumps off to kind of get away. But we see that we also have Jeffrey Wright's Gordon in the corner, literally giving it his all to try and bring Batman off this person he's beating to a pulp, which is the Riddler, as we know. Likely in this moment, potentially stopping from Batman murdering. In this moment, we're then given a very incredible shot of Batman falling through the ceiling of rubble in the midst of an explosion, possibly linked to that explosion that we spoke about earlier. That's a reach. That explosion could honestly be anything. So, honestly, what a cinematic shot of the Batman, and what an entrance. But I do wonder, how did he survive falling like 20 feet like that, unless he's on a grapple hook? But either way, I'm also super intrigued by this hallway scene, which in of itself looks so cinematic and incredible. We have Batman facing multiple thugs, of whom some are emptying whole entire clips of bullets into his torso, but his armor deflects it, and I love how Batman just walks against the force of those bullets in such perseverance. You do have to think that the thugs are pretty stupid, because fair enough, they're shooting at his armor and it's bulletproof, but why not shoot his head? Because that cowl doesn't look very bulletproof. But the location, where is this? It really has me intrigued, because this reminds me of the elevator of what would take you down to the Batcave or something, like, or possibly Wayne Terminus. But I'm not saying it is. This could honestly be something like the entrance to the Iceberg Lounge, which also, as you can tell, has this very industrial look, as I said, and when the bullets light up this particular scene, it has a similar industrial, edgy looking kind of design to it. So it could be that as he's trying to go to speak to the Penguin, demand his way down into there. Towards the end of the trailer, we get an amazing sizzle reel of the Batmobile, where with Bruce just slamming it into gear, kicking down hard on the gas as we see the Batmobile just slam through all of these obstacles as they get obliterated by the front bumper. The ferocity of the shots in Batman's face is just everything in this moment in the trailer. And then it cuts to a clip of where Batman uses his wingsuit to jump off the top of what could be the GCPD building. Now, I say this because of what we know from the other trailer last year at DC Fandom, is that he's literally getting shot by the GCPD as he grapples up through the heart of that precinct, which I'm probably showing on screen right now. And here we see probably the moments after that, where the officers have finally made it up to the top after going up the stairs, but he quickly got up there, and they're still trying to apprehend him. Now, the real question is, that has been racking my brain ever since we saw the last trailer, is why are the officers of the GCPD shooting at him after he's been on their crime scenes? Literally, he was invited on. We see them all looking at him as he follows Detective James Gordon on to the mayor's, crime scene of one of the Riddler's first victims. So was one of the Riddler's murders framed on the Batman, and that's how it leads to this moment? Could this be a continuation of where we see earlier on in the trailer Batman goes to meet Riddler in Arkham or something? Maybe he goes too far and it goes awry and the police go after him because of whatever happens. This is all likely a continuation of that struggle scene, which, as you're seeing on screen right now, with all of those cops as Batman is charging his way through them, and we see Jim restrains Batman. It just kind of potentially ends up in more of a struggle and he escapes amongst the gunfire. But I have to admit, the more I see that scene of last year of where he's trying to break through all the police officers, it makes me think that could mean that the Riddler's in the same room, possibly behind a cell, and he's just wanting to get past them. He's really wanting to get past all of the cops to get to the Riddler, because he can't, once again, as I said earlier in this breakdown, he can't contain his rage. He's so impulsive, and he's yet to temper that with experience of years to come. But as I said, escaping amongst the GCPD officers firing at him to then fly like a literal bat, it looks incredible, because here we see him fly literally like a bat, except with a much more grounded approach, a literal wingsuit. And if you've seen the YouTube videos of people gliding in wingsuits, you know how fast you can go in a wingsuit. So here we literally see Batman fly throughout Gotham. Notice, and as I said, the cinematography looks incredible, and I can't wait to see these shots, but it's like Reeves attached a GoPro or something to the back of the wingsuit, the front, because in this particular scene, we see the angle looking down at the officers as they're about to grab onto him. As he flies down, we see the point of view of Batman as he falls down off the building and then flies past one of the officers looking out. As I was kind of getting into, I do want to know how he managed to change into that. Is it like a part of his cape already that he can kind of like attach and just zip up? But I don't know. That is yet to be seen. It could be the situation of, as I said, with all the GCPD officers trying to run up the precinct, he's already just got up there with the grapple hook, so he has some time to kind of get into it before, you know, jumping off just as they arrive. Up next, we then get this shot of the aftermath of one of the Riddler's murders. The DA, Gil Colson, at the cathedral, who crashed the mayor's funeral in the other trailer, as I mentioned earlier. Another victim of the Riddler's. As I said, we know he explodes with the Batman trying to help him, and here we seem to have the aftermath of this shot, and the suit isn't as damaged as what people would be thinking. This whole scene from the previous trailer last year led people to believe that it'd be getting a second suit. I've spoken about the possibilities of a second suit, but I've always remained more or less in the stance that I don't think he will. If anything, yeah, maybe they'll tease a second suit towards the end where they're working on it in the Batcave, but I do feel like this will be his primary suit, and in this moment, it's an awesome looking shot. It makes all the fire and dust, if you will, the way it's kind of tarnished the Batsuit makes it look very black. But it's not as damaged. It looks like it could be just cleaned off. It just looks like he's been blown back by a bunch of smoke and explosion. But there's no cracks or integral armor fractures by the looks of it. So I don't think that this means it's right at the end of the movie. I think that maybe he just kind of cleans it up and just makes sure that it's, you know, the way it should look. But I wouldn't say it's completely obliterated or anything. It's just Bruce looking up after, unfortunately, he failed to save the district attorney, Gil Colson. We then see the Riddler live streaming to Gotham. Absolute Gotham villain perfection. I love it when they broadcast in the news, and just in this day and age, obviously live streaming is perfect. He says the riddle of what's black and blue and dead all over. Cops? I don't know, I'll leave that to you guys. Over the riddle being read out by a very creepy Paul Dano Riddler voice, we see the scarred back of Bruce Wayne, of which I think, you know, could be where he's staying. It might not even be Wayne Manor, by the way, because according to rumors in this iteration, I mean, maybe there is a Wayne Manor out there as well, but because of Bruce's mission at this part in his life and wanting to always be there in the heart of the action, some rumors are saying that he could have a very gothic looking penthouse in Wayne Enterprises. So think of it like a whole floor just with a very interior furnished look of what Wayne Manor would look like, but it's actually in Wayne Enterprises rather than being in Wayne Manor outside the city limits, so to speak. And I think that this location could very well be that. And this particular shot of him looking out, it really does feel as though that this could be the case. You know, he's looking out over Gotham City and literally living in the heart of Gotham as Batman, and watching over Gotham City at all times. In this particular shot, it does appear as though we have the Riddler in the back of a GCPD transport van, probably likely after he gets arrested at that diner at the very beginning of the trailer. I'm also absolutely dying to know what the context is behind this particular scene in the trailer, in where we see that Batman lights up a flare, a red flare. Yet again, the themes of red in this movie are very, very prominent. But who are all of these people following him? Because you could say, are they pursuing him? But they honestly don't seem like they are, because I'm wondering if he freed some people, because in this moment they don't seem to be chasing after him. I know you can't move fast in water, but if you wanted to, you can still trudge along pretty fast, you know, but they don't seem to be doing that. Look at what you're seeing on screen. These people seem to just be following him. So I'm wondering if in this moment, for some reason or another, this could also, despite all the kind of hard action, the grueling task of Batman trying to stop the Riddler, we might see some more hopeful moments from the Batman, and where there's this moment that led him down to the sewers. Who knows if we get a Killer Croc reference or something, but one of his clues, or maybe this is an answer to one of the Riddler's plans, he maybe solves one of them, or just God knows what, but he liberates a bunch of people and leads them out. And maybe so many people might be grateful to the Batman in this moment. Again, the thing that leads me to say that is that these people are following him. They're not like rushing along, and it's like the Batman as a light in the darkness in this particular scene. But if not, I would love your ideas. Up next, we then get another piece of evidence held by someone, likely James Gordon, because we see the evidence gloves on, shown to Batman. It says, "See you in hell." And by the way, guys, this particular shot here is exactly why we don't have white eyes. I'm in favor of not having white eyes. Don't get me wrong, I would love white eyes either way, but you really do get the emotion when you see Batman's eyes. Watch this trailer again with that context if you are having a white eyes type fan, and just see what it would be like without seeing Pattinson's eyes, and what that can convey to the camera. Also, I'm absolutely dying to know what Selina is looking at here as she's looking over the railing. Could Batman have fallen in the Ace Chemicals pit and he's turning into the Joker there? No, obviously not. But yeah, I have no idea as to the location or anything. These railings seem to be at various parts of the trailer. I would love to say Ace Chemicals, but obviously that would be a reach. We know there's Ace Chemicals posters, though, that pertain to the drops, the drug that I was talking about that's going around Gotham. Somebody's distributing them. The Ace Chemicals poster as well has literal drops falling off the letters of the words Ace Chemicals. By the way, one thing to take out of this scene, I love Selina's nails because they're very pointy, and yes, I'm sure they would hurt if she were to scratch you. But the question is, are they fake nails or are they real nails? And ladies and gentlemen, that final scene where Oz is like, I got you, I got you. And then we see Batman go ham screaming as he leaps through the fire and the flames in the Batmobile with Oz's car upside down as he pelts into it with the bumper. And we have Batman walking past him. And just tell me, imagine, how terrifying would it be to be upside down in a car like that? You've already effed off this guy. You're on Batman's bad side. You're not on his good side. And then, putting him through all that crap, he approaches you like that with his fists clenched. It's that kind of thing where you have that meme. It was like, in this moment, Oz knew that he fucked up. Now, as I said, in some of that extra B-roll footage, it is so cool seeing it because it gives us that little extra context of various scenes in the trailer, even bonus stuff, in where we see the Riddler insignia here painted out on this sheet, perhaps in the Riddler apartment himself. If not the Riddler's apartment, it could be anyone's apartment, because as we know in the movie, the Riddler does seem to get some followers to some extent who also put on similar coats with similar logos and whatnot, and this also comes into what I will speak about in a second or two. We have Batman taking Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon to his garage. I have no idea if this is a part of the Batcave, because you also see some of Bruce Wayne's father's old cars, I'm sure, but rather than loads of Batmobiles. But either way, I love seeing them come down on the elevator. Batman there, Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon right there, absolutely fantastic. We also have entries into Bruce Wayne's journal, very important to this movie, because as I said, he will be narrating out his own thoughts in a very noir point of view. Keywords there, driven movie. Now, do you want to know what he says? I have transcribed it out. I'm pretty sure it's 99.8% accurate, and he says the following, and luckily I write very similar to this, so some people were like, how did you read that? But either way, it says, it's not just a call, it's a warning to them. Fear is a tool. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows. I wish I could say that I'm making a difference, but I don't know. These nights all roll together in a rush, behind the mark. Sometimes in the morning, I have to push myself to remember everything that happened. And I love that last line because I feel like he's saying sometimes in the morning I have to push myself to remember all the trauma of like his parents' death, all the bad crap that drives him to do this, like to force him to be raw in why he does this, why he goes out there. That last line I find very chilling. And that was just a glimpse of some of the monologues we'll get from Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne during the movie. And I can't wait for that. It's going to give us such a kind of hijacking into this character's mind unlike any Batman movie has ever gone into before. You can also see that he's designing the bat symbol as well. I love how he writes down needs to be recognized as a bat. Yeah, well, nice one, Bruce. It definitely does. But also it says possible trackers as well. So I don't think it's necessarily just a bat emblem, but also possibly his batarangs or possible trackers that are, when thrown out, look like a batarang as well. And I love this, brainstorming by Bruce Wayne. Shots of Drifter Bruce are up next as well. Shots of Penguin, more of the Riddler, more of Andy Serkis's Alfred, likely in the subway Wayne Terminus Batcave. We also get a shot of Bruce Wayne in a very big rage in this particular scene. Just throwing something over with these old files and papers in such a fit of rage. Now, could this be another section to the abandoned subway? Because I'm saying that because there's lots of old cabinets, lots of old drawers, lots of old pieces of paper here. Hence, as I said, abandoned train station, subway. It would have lots of little bits and bobs like that in some of the reception areas where you get your tickets and stuff, and maybe this is all connected to that. It's just very old and dusty, and, random speculation here. Maybe he's finding out in a very similar way to Batman Telltale, where he's like, what happened, Alfred? He's very angry. Maybe he's learned from the Riddler here. Just fun speculation, as I said, what his and how his parents are linked to the corruption, the sins of my father. Now, in this B-roll footage, we see Batman and Gordon kick down this door. Now, could this be the entrance of a mausoleum? It looks like it could be in a cemetery, but at the same time, I can't identify. I believe that says a G and an O or something. It doesn't say W. It's not like they're going into the Wayne Mausoleum or anything like that, but this could be another part of the Riddler's clues that they're trying to pick up on. But it does look to be like a very old door like that, and I would love maybe some more ideas as to who you think those initials could belong to. And then we see that the Batman is shoving this person whose hands are bound as well up against a wall. It looks like he has a hood on, which is interesting because it's like, Batman, why would you be doing that to a possible victim? But I think that this could be one of the people dressed up in the Riddler's gear. As I said, behind the scenes filming displayed a lot of people dressed up in similar get-ups to the Riddler, and obviously with the stress that Batman is going through, he probably doesn't have any time for people wasting his time with dressing up like the Riddler or whatever. And other than that, there's just more fun B-roll footage of Batman, Riddler, and Selina, and I think that is everything, guys. So I'm gonna close this off here for now. But that was my in-depth shot-by-shot breakdown of the Batman trailer, as well as all of that B-roll footage. I wanted to do, even though it's a very long video, I wanted to go ham into it because I'm a big fan, and I wanted to make sure there's no juice left behind. I wanted to savor it all and just really go into it. But honestly, if you've got to this part of the video and you're not subscribed, make sure, because I always say this, YouTube always tells us that most people who watch our videos, like up to 40% of people who watch week to week, aren't subscribed. And if you want to stay up to date with more videos like this, because usually week to week on this channel, we revisit the trailer, I engage some of your comments and whatnot, or just any general news updates from DC fandom. I'm going to get into some of the other panels. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to it, because we are getting into the nit and grit details. I promise you, not all videos are as long as this one, but oh man, that was a blast. What an absolute blast. Even though I've done this breakdown, I'm sure I'm gonna have a ton more ideas, so there will be future videos just like this to come. But most importantly as well, I want you guys to bounce off what I've said. What do you think about what I've said? These are my initial thoughts, but do you have anything to expand on what I said theory-wise and everything good like that? Also, if you got this far in the video, if you want to prove it, not everyone gets this far, type in the comments with whatever comment you're gonna put anyway, but right at the beginning, put a hashtag hashtag symbol, I am the shadows. And yeah, you can follow me more in the top pinned comment. Everyone always asks me this, but I put my links to social media, Discord, places to buy hats like this and whatnot, all in the top pinned comment, my comment. Click on the show more, you will see my Twitter links and just everything. So follow me there. And that is pretty much everything, guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope all of you have a lovely rest of your day. Check out the future DC fandom content on this channel, which I'll be playing catch up with for the next few days. And yeah, I'll see you guys, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.